Doctors, when has a coworker failed at their job? This happened in a small town far from the big city where I work. A dad and his 2-year-old child were out in the fields. Suddenly, a rattlesnake bit the child. The dad quickly took his child to the small town's emergency room. It was clear the child had been bitten by a snake, but the doctor there did something really wrong. He said, "Oh, it's probably fine. The snake probably didn't put any poison in when it bit." Now, that's a really silly thing to say. When a small child gets bitten by a rattlesnake, you should always think there's poison and treat it right away. But this doctor didn't do that. The small hospital had the medicine to help with snake bites. But the doctor didn't give it to the child. He also made another big mistake. Instead of sending the child to our big city hospital by helicopter, which is fast, he sent the child by ambulance, which is much slower. Several hours later, the child arrived at our hospital. By then, the child's heart had almost stopped beating. We tried very hard to save the little one, but sadly, the child died. I still can't believe how badly that other doctor messed up. Story 2. When I was about 17, I started having pain in my belly every day. I also had big problems with my gut. I couldn't eat much anymore. Sometimes I had diarrhea, sometimes I was constipated. My periods got more and more painful. I started losing a lot of blood when I had my period, even though I was very small, less than 5 feet tall. You'd think a good doctor could figure out this was a problem with my female parts. But my doctor at the time, who was a woman, by the way, said it was just anxiety. She said she wouldn't bother looking for or treating a problem with my female parts unless I was older and having trouble getting pregnant. Over the next few years, the problems with my gut and my female parts slowly got worse. I saw many different doctors. They told me things like, "It's just stress, it's anxiety. Are you pregnant? Are you sure you're not pregnant? Every woman has painful periods. It's just constipation. Take this medicine you can buy at the store," and so on. Meanwhile, my gut was working less and less. A test showed that food was moving through my gut way too slowly. I only weighed about 88 pounds. It got so bad that I even started losing control of my bowels. No treatment seemed to help. I was 24 and couldn't work because I was literally pooping my pants and couldn't control it. Doctors suggested I should maybe see a therapist and said I might be making it sound worse than it was. Then one day I saw a new doctor for some regular women's health tests. The test showed something wasn't right with my cervix. Within 2 weeks, I had a surgery to check if I had cervical cancer. Instead, they found out I had a condition called endometriosis all over my insides. It was on my bowel, my cervix, between my legs, on some of the bands that hold organs in place. I had a cyst on my ovary as big as a tennis ball. The endometriosis was even on my gallbladder. After they removed the endometriosis and gave me treatment, my gut started working again within 3 months. But I will never be able to have children. If that first doctor, when I was 17, had just done her job right, I wouldn't have lost 7 years of my life. I wouldn't have lost my gallbladder, my ability to have children, and my mental health. Story 3. When I was learning to be a doctor, we had a patient I'll never forget. She was a lady in her 60s who was having more and more trouble remembering things. She was getting worse at taking care of herself too. She had been seeing her regular doctor who said she had dementia. She also saw a brain doctor who agreed. The lady couldn't really tell us much about what was happening to her. We talked to her family and friends. They told us she was getting worse really fast. I remember looking at her hair. You could see where her new hair was growing in, meeting the bright red dye she used to use. Her nails were grown out, but you could still see some hot pink polish on them. I thought, wow, it wasn't that long ago that she was not only taking care of herself, but even going to get her hair and nails done. The lady I was looking at now seemed so different from that. The brain doctor I was learning from noticed something wasn't quite right about this. He had the lady stay in the hospital and did every test he could think of. One test was called a lumbar puncture, where they take some fluid from your spine. All these tests showed that the lady had a disease called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Some people call it mad cow disease in humans. Sadly, there's no way to treat this disease. The lady died a few months later, but because we found out what was really wrong, we were able to tell her family that she would keep getting worse. This helped them make plans for what to do. Story 4. I need to share a story about a serious medical error I encountered. It involves a young woman who received a pacemaker she didn't actually need. and the situation went from bad to worse due to a doctor's mistakes. In medicine, when we implant a pacemaker, there's a specific procedure we follow. The lead, that's the wire that sends electrical signals, should go through the subclavian vein and end up in the right ventricle of the heart. It's a delicate process that requires precision. However, in this case, the doctor made a critical error. He placed the lead in the subclavian artery instead of the vein. Not only that, but he then threaded it across the aortic valve and into the left ventricle. This is completely wrong and potentially dangerous. What's even more alarming is that this error went unnoticed for over a year. The patient, a 25-year-old woman, didn't even need the pacemaker to begin with. I first saw her when she came in with congestive heart failure. The misplaced lead had been slowly damaging her aortic valve over time, leading to this severe condition. To fix this grave mistake, another surgeon and I had to perform a complex procedure. First, we surgically removed the incorrectly placed pacemaker and its lead. But that wasn't the end of it. We then had to replace the patient's aortic valve, which had been destroyed by the misplaced lead. This kind of error is completely inexcusable in our profession. It's a stark reminder that while we often assume our doctors are among the best, statistically, half of all doctors are below average in skill. Yet most people believe their doctor is in the top 10%, which is, of course, impossible. Before delving into the next regrettable recap, please remember to like and subscribe if you would like us to create more of this content. Thank you. Story 5. I'm not a doctor, but I had an experience with a careless dentist that I think is important to share. For several years, I went to the same dentist's office. Every time I went, they told me two things. I needed braces and I needed to have my wisdom teeth taken out. This was a big problem for me because I'm a professional trumpet player. Playing at a high level with braces is really hard, maybe even impossible. And having my wisdom teeth removed would mean I couldn't work for at least a month while I recovered. I explained this to the dentist every single time I visited, but they kept insisting. Finally, I decided to get another opinion about my wisdom teeth. I went to see an oral surgeon. That's a dentist who specializes in mouth surgery. They took x-rays and looked at the records from my regular dentist. Then we had a conversation that really opened my eyes. The oral surgeon said, "So, according to your records, you're having a lot of pain in your wisdom teeth." I was surprised and told them, "I'm not having any pain at all. I never have." The surgeon paused for a moment, then said, "Well, I'm going to assume your regular dentist made up the rest of your records too. I'm just going to put this folder down and do my job properly." What he told me next was shocking. He explained that the way my wisdom teeth grew in, they're sitting right on top of a nerve. If they tried to take the teeth out, it would be almost impossible not to cut that nerve. If that happened, I'd lose feeling in the lower half of my face for the rest of my life. You can imagine how terrible that would be for a trumpet player. The surgeon advised me that if my wisdom teeth weren't causing pain, I shouldn't worry about them. But he did say I needed to have a different tooth removed, one next to my wisdom teeth. Interestingly, I had asked my regular dentist about this tooth before, but they completely ignored my concern. After learning all this, I never went back to that first dentist. I'm planning to start with a new one soon. Story 6. So there I am, working a pretty standard shift in the ER, when the paramedics roll in with this guy who can barely breathe. His airway's so blocked it's like he tried to swallow a golf ball. We take one look and think, great, another case of throat cancer gone wild. Now, we need to get this poor bastard breathing pronto, so we decide to do a tracheostomy. For those of you not in the know, that's doctor speak for let's cut a hole in his throat and jam a tube in there. It's as fun as it sounds. We do the procedure, yanking his neck around like we're trying to open a stubborn jar of pickles. Everything seems hunky-dory until we take a look at the post-op x-rays. That's when one of our bright-eyed, bushy-tailed residents pipes up with the question that made my blood run cold. "Hey, when did this guy break his neck?" You could have heard a pin drop in that room. We're all staring at this x-ray, clear as day, showing a neck fracture that could have turned this guy into a human bobblehead with one wrong move. And the kicker? It was there in the initial x-ray too. We'd missed it completely. So we corner the patient and start grilling him. Turns out on his way to see us, his ambulance got into a fender bender. Did anyone think to mention this little detail? Of course not. The patient thought he just had a bit of whiplash, like after a rough roller coaster ride. Let me tell you, we were millimeters, freaking millimeters, away from turning this guy's life into a living hell, and we'd just been manhandling his neck like it was made of rubber. Sadly, the guy didn't make it. The cancer got him about 2 weeks later. Story 7. I had a patient come in with an unusual problem that really stuck with me. She was lactating, but she wasn't pregnant or breastfeeding. Now, that's not something you see every day. When I asked if she'd seen anyone about this before, she told me her previous doctor had brushed it off. They said it was just leftover milk from her baby. The thing is, her baby had been weaned for 14 months. That didn't sit right with me at all. In medicine, we're taught to look for horses when we hear hoofbeats, not zebras. But sometimes you've got to consider those zebras. I had a hunch this might be one of those times. I decided to send her for a brain scan immediately. I didn't want to alarm her, but I knew we needed to rule out some serious possibilities. Sure enough, the scan revealed a brain tumour. Within a week, she was in surgery to have it removed. I'm happy to say she's doing very well now, but it makes you wonder, how long had she been walking around with this tumour, all because someone didn't dig a little deeper? This case really drove home for me how important it is to take patients seriously and investigate thoroughly. Sometimes it's those odd, seemingly unrelated symptoms that can point to something serious. I'd like to add a note here. If you're ever unsure about a diagnosis or treatment, don't hesitate to seek a second opinion. Get your medical records and bring them to another doctor. And please don't rely on internet strangers for medical advice. Your health is too important for that. Story 8. Here's a medical nightmare my husband and I went through. It all started with a strange dimpled spot on his back. Nothing major, just odd. Being responsible adults, we went to see a dermatologist. Not just once, but multiple times. Each visit, we were brushed off like we were paranoid children. Don't worry about it, the doctor would say, his irritation growing with each of our visits. At one point, my husband had a nodule at his belt line that was bothering him. The dermatologist burned it off, but still insisted everything was fine. His attitude was so dismissive, it was like we were wasting his precious time by being concerned about my husband's health. That negative experience left such a bad taste in our mouths that we avoided dermatologists for nearly a decade. 10 years. Looking back, I could kick myself for letting it go that long. When we finally worked up the courage to see a new dermatologist, the difference was night and day. This doctor took one look at that spot on my husband's back and immediately recognized it for what it was, a sarcoma. A type of cancer that had been given a decade to grow unchecked. The aftermath of that diagnosis was brutal. My husband now sports a 48-inch scar snaking down his back, a permanent reminder of the tumor removal and the extensive reconstruction needed to reshape his back. As for me, I've become an unwilling expert in wound care. Drains, tunneling, bandages, triage, you name it, I've dealt with it. Not to mention the mountains of laundry that come with massive wound healing. It's been a crash course in medical care that I never wanted or expected. Sometimes when I'm elbow deep in bandages or tackling yet another load of bloody laundry, I think about that first dermatologist, the one who was so patronizing, so dismissive of our concerns. In those moments, I have some pretty graphic thoughts about where I'd like to shove his face. Story 9. As a resident doctor, I encountered a case that still sends chills down my spine. It's a stark reminder of how easily serious conditions can be overlooked. A young boy came into our ER one night struggling to walk. His parents were worried sick. Apparently, he'd been losing his ability to walk over several months. They also mentioned he'd been having random episodes of projectile vomiting. Checking his records, I saw he'd visited his regular doctor multiple times. The approach seemed piecemeal at best. X-ray one hip, then the other, prescribe some anti-nausea medication, and send him home. But when we examined him, the severity was unmistakable. This kid couldn't even stand up straight. His coordination was completely off. We ran through some basic neurological tests, and he failed every single one. Even as a relatively inexperienced resident, I knew we were dealing with something serious. A CT scan revealed the horrifying truth. A massive tumour in his cerebellum. Not only was it affecting his mobility, but it was also blocking the normal flow of fluid in his brain, raising intracranial pressure and causing the vomiting. What followed was a flurry of activity. We called in neurosurgeons in the middle of the night for emergency surgery to relieve the pressure. The boy ended up in the ICU and later underwent more surgery to address the tumour itself. I'll never forget how my usually stoic supervisor became visibly emotional. It hit us all hard, thinking about how long this child had suffered without a proper diagnosis. This case drilled home two crucial lessons. Always conduct a thorough examination and don't be afraid to trust your instincts. In medicine, overlooking details can have life-altering consequences. To aspiring doctors out there, remember, it's okay to get emotional sometimes. We're professionals, but we're also human. Cases like these remind us why we chose this path in the first place. Story 10. My best friend, not even 30, found herself bouncing from doctor to doctor for nearly 3 years. Each time the diagnosis was the same: irritable bowel. She tried every diet under the sun, but nothing helped. Then came the day she called me, voice tight with pain. "I've broken my ribs," she said. Her doctor had dismissed it as a fracture, but something didn't add up. She couldn't pinpoint how it happened. When the pain became unbearable, she finally landed in the ER. A CT scan revealed the horrifying truth: stage 4 colon cancer. Massive 4-inch tumours were compressing her organs, causing the pain we'd all mistaken for less serious issues. She died just a few months later. For 3 years, she'd been desperately seeking help, voicing her concerns to professional after professional. If just one of them had taken her seriously, if just one had ordered a colonoscopy, she might still be here today. The tragedy of it all still haunts me. It wasn't the cancer that truly killed her, it was apathy. The casual dismissal of her symptoms, the easy explanations that let doctors send her home without digging deeper. This experience taught me a brutal lesson: trust your instincts about your body. Story 11. We got a call about a woman with leg pain. It seemed normal at first, but it wasn't. When we got there, her leg looked really bad. It was huge, 3 times bigger than her other leg. The colour was all wrong too, blue and purple. We couldn't feel a pulse in her foot, which is really bad news. She told us she'd fallen on ice a few days ago. She did the right thing and went to a quick care clinic, but they messed up. They didn't take any x-rays. They just said it was a sprain and gave her a boot to walk in. But it was way worse than that. Both bones in her lower leg were badly broken. These broken bones were cutting into her blood vessels and muscles. We did our best to help her, but it was too late. She ended up losing her foot. This really upset us. If the clinic had just taken an x-ray, they would have seen how bad it was. They could have sent her to the hospital right away. Her foot might have been saved. Story 12. When I was learning to be a doctor, I worked in the emergency room for a while. One day, a man came in who had fallen and hit his head on the street. Now, this wasn't his first fall that day. He'd already been to another hospital earlier, but they sent him home saying he was fine. When we looked at him, something caught our eye. His eyes were kind of yellow. That's not normal. We weren't sure what had happened to him, and he couldn't tell us much, so we did a special x-ray of his belly called a CT scan. What we saw was shocking. There's a tube in your body that carries bile from your liver. This man's tube was huge, about 3 times bigger than it should be. It was so big you could almost drive a truck through it. Then we checked his temperature. It was really high, 103 degrees. Turns out this man had a dangerous infection in his bile duct. That's why he kept falling down. He was really, really sick. The other hospital missed this completely. And that's a big problem because this kind of infection is an emergency. It needs to be treated right away. Story 13. There was this heart doctor working in the emergency room at our hospital. He was in the middle of a really tough night shift. These shifts are no joke. Sometimes they last more than 26 hours, and doctors might do this multiple times a week. During his shift, the doctor started feeling dizzy and really tired. His head felt light, like he might faint. Now, feeling this way during a long, hard shift isn't unusual, so nobody thought it was a big deal. The doctor decided to take a quick nap in the staff room. That's pretty normal too. Other hospital workers would walk by and see him sleeping there. They all just thought, poor guy must be exhausted, and let him rest. But here's the shocking part. He wasn't sleeping. He had died, and for hours people kept walking by, not realizing anything was wrong. It wasn't until much later that someone finally noticed something wasn't right. By then, he'd been dead for hours. Story 14. One day, the emergency room doctor wanted to send us a patient. The doctor thought she had a bad urinary tract infection that was making her a little septic. That's when an infection gets into your blood and makes you really sick. I looked at her lab tests and right away something jumped out at me. This woman was diabetic and her tests showed she had something called DKA. That stands for diabetic ketoacidosis. It's a serious problem where your body can't use sugar for energy and starts breaking down fat instead. It can make you really, really sick if it's not treated quickly. Normally, when someone has DKA, we send them straight to the intensive care unit. They need special insulin treatment through an IV and lots of fluids to help their body recover. But this woman, she was just lying in the hallway of the emergency room. She wasn't getting any medicine at all, and she looked terrible. The emergency room doctor had missed this big problem. They were focused on the infection and didn't notice the diabetes emergency happening at the same time. Story 15. So my mom's friend had been having trouble with her eyes. She went to see an eye doctor to get it checked out. Pretty normal stuff, right? The eye doctor started looking at her eyes. Then, out of the blue, he asked her, "So, how long have you had MS?" MS is short for multiple sclerosis. It's a disease that affects your brain and spinal cord. It can cause all sorts of problems in your body. Here's the crazy part. My mum's friend had no idea she had MS. This was the first time anyone had ever told her. But get this, she'd been having weird health problems for about 20 years. All kinds of symptoms that didn't seem to make sense together. Doctors had never figured out what was wrong. It turns out all those problems were because of MS. For 2 decades, she'd been living with this disease without knowing it. Story 16. When I was a kid, my eyes started hurting. My dad, trying to do the right thing, took me to our regular eye doctor. But this is where things went wrong. The doctor kept insisting the problem was simple. I wasn't cleaning my contact lenses properly. His solution? Stronger and stronger cleaning chemicals. But here's the thing. It wasn't helping. In fact, it was making things worse. It got so bad that I couldn't even open my eyes fully in a lit room. And remember, I hadn't even worn contacts for months at this point. That should have been a big red flag. This went on for a whole year. A year of pain and worsening symptoms. Finally, my mum put her foot down. She made my dad take me to a different doctor. Now, get this. The new doctor didn't even need any fancy equipment. He took one look at me in the waiting room and knew right away. "You have a raging eye infection," he said. With the right diagnosis, I finally got the medicine I needed. The infection cleared up in a month, but the damage was done. My eyes were so scarred that I couldn't wear contacts again for 20 years. Thanks for listening to those regrettable recaps. Now it's time for Today I Effed Up stories all about coworkers. Story 1. Today I messed up by getting drunk and admitting I like my coworker. I work on a cruise ship. While we aren't allowed to drink, even when off the ship, many of my coworkers go to bars in the towns where we dock. One of my newer coworkers is a girl named Mia, who is 23. I have the biggest crush on her. Because we live and work on the ship together, we see each other often every day. We even have a part of our schedule where we work together. The entire time we're together, we talk and laugh. It would be hard not to get a crush on her. Yesterday was my 21st birthday. My co-workers, including Mia, slightly pressured me to go to a bar for the first time ever. I had a few drinks they suggested and got a bit drunk. The subject of relationships came up. Our ship's pastry chef asked if anyone liked someone on the ship. I said I had a crush on Mia since she got on the boat. My co-workers started asking Mia what she thought of me. She said I was a good friend, but not really her type. I didn't say anything else while we were there and cried a little to my roommate later. Mia hasn't mentioned it yet. She's acting pretty much how she always did. I'm trying my best, but I feel like an idiot. Story 2. Today I messed up by showing my coworker a photo of my chest. I'm in a long-distance relationship. My breasts have become much larger lately due to hormone changes. This morning, I sent my boyfriend a photo of them. At work today, I had to take portraits of a new staff member for the website. I showed her the photos I'd taken, swiping through to choose the best ones. I forgot about the personal photo and accidentally swiped to a picture of my face with my chest exposed. I apologized and laughed about it. She seemed to find it funny too. I told my manager about it to get a laugh and to prevent any possible complaint to human resources. The coworker was relaxed about it, but couldn't keep a straight face whenever she saw me today. It was an honest mistake, but I didn't expect to show the newest hire such a personal photo. It's quite an unusual way to welcome someone to the company. Story 3. Today I messed up by calling my overly sniffing coworker creepy. Here's how I messed up today. My coworker, A, female in her 20s, is always very friendly and talks to me a lot. But one thing throws me off. She constantly comments on how I smell different from our other colleagues of the same ethnicity. It's a compliment, I guess, but oddly specific. Today, I walked into the office before A arrived. The moment I entered, she called out, "Is that you, original poster?" I said yes, and she replied, "Oh yeah, I thought I smelled you." This wasn't my brightest moment, but I blurted out, "Yeah, that's not creepy at all." There were some laughs, but the atmosphere got awkward. I apologized right away for calling her creepy, but she's been giving me the cold shoulder ever since. I messed up by overreacting, but I'm not sure if this is a valid level of discomfort. Story 4. Today I messed up by cheating with my coworker and planning to run away together. I work in international live events that take weeks to complete. I coordinate them and work with a team to set up and operate. I'm close with my coworkers, but we live across the world and fly in for each event. This time we had someone new working sound, Clint. I'd seen him in video calls but hadn't met him in person. This was a big event for our company. I arrived, met Clint, and started working. Gradually, my other co-workers were sent to different events, leaving Clint and me to finish everything. Bad weather and vendor issues put us under pressure. We worked 15, 20-hour days to meet deadlines. Afterward, Clint and I would hang out and smoke cannabis, legally. We had a lot in common and felt a strong connection. We were both unhappily married. His wife had medical problems and spent a lot of money. My husband had become angry and accumulated debt. Our relationship started platonically, but stress and lack of sleep led to sexual tension. We began having dinners that felt like dates and spending time in each other's hotel rooms. We crossed many boundaries, but stopped short of sex. We decided to sort out our lives before going further. We made plans to leave our spouses, sell our houses, and travel together. We created a list of places to visit and things to do. Clint even planned to get a tattoo for me. After the event, we kept in touch virtually, exchanging sexual messages. We agreed not to tell our partners about the affair due to their mental health issues, but planned to divorce and move on. At home, I asked my husband for a divorce. Clint talked to his wife, but it was more complicated due to her volatility and her family's involvement. Clint became distant, and the tattoos he got were different from what he'd planned for me. I grew concerned, but continued planning our future. Clint went on anniversary dates with his wife and stopped responding to my messages. After weeks of mixed signals, he told me he was having doubts. During a work video chat, he said he owed it to his wife to try and make their marriage work. Now I'm left to deal with the aftermath. Most of my friends are co-workers, so I can't discuss my heartbreak. I don't have money to fix my problems at home or to live alone in another country. I can't go back to my husband, knowing it would be wrong. I'll see Clint again soon at another event where we'll likely be alone for hours, but he plans to stay faithful to his wife. We never even had the passionate encounter we talked about. Story 5. Today I messed up when I, 24-year-old male, offered my co-worker, 18-year-old female, a ride home. And last night I offered to drive one of my co-workers, an attractive intern, home after work. I've never wanted to cross professional boundaries because we work together and there's an age gap. However, I still ended up in an unexpected situation. On the way to her apartment, she got a phone call from her boyfriend. From her responses, I could tell he was upset about a photo she posted on social media. The photo showed her drinking with co-workers at our monthly office party. Their argument got heated. She called him insecure and jealous. I tried not to eavesdrop, but it was impossible not to hear. At one point, I had to use gestures to ask for directions to her apartment. Her boyfriend realized she was in a car with someone. She told him one of her co-workers was driving her home. Then she said, "Yes, he's one of the guys in the photo, the tall one on the far left with the cute dimples." This compliment caught me off guard and I missed a turn. The boyfriend called again, unhappy that she was still with me. My co-worker got frustrated and switched to Danish, her native language. She didn't know I could understand some Danish from a Scandinavian friend. In Danish, she told her boyfriend she'd never cheat on him, especially not with guys from work. Then she started making fun of her co-workers, including me, to make her boyfriend feel better. She said I never blink, walk like I'm on an invisible bicycle, and have a husky voice that makes her want to clear her throat. When we finally reached her apartment, I just smiled and waved goodbye. I wish I hadn't offered the ride. It was an uncomfortable experience, and Monday at the office will be awkward for me. Story 6. Today I messed up by helping a drunk co-worker and trusting human resources. I'm a 29-year-old man working in digital marketing. Our company held a party to celebrate finishing a big project. As I was leaving, I saw a drunk female co-worker in her mid-30s. We've worked together for 3 years, but I don't know her well. She was struggling to walk, so I offered help. She couldn't get an Uber because she was vomiting, so I decided to drive her home. I have a dual dashcam set up in my car. I moved the rear camera to the front to record inside the vehicle. A month later, on April 25th, Human Resources called me in. My manager was there looking serious. They asked what I did after the party. I got defensive and asked what the meeting was about. They said an employee complained about my inappropriate behavior. I denied doing anything wrong. They left the room briefly. When they returned, my manager said a witness saw me put the drunk co-worker in my car. I explained that I drove her home and she accepted my help. They looked at me suspiciously and said they'd continue investigating. Today I got an email telling me to make a statement for the police. I'm suspended until the case is dismissed. I'm very angry. I hired a lawyer and submitted a statement to the police. I found out the co-worker I helped is the ex-wife of my manager's golfing friend. The company doesn't know I have dashcam footage and a cell phone video of me walking her to her house. I'm innocent and plan to fight this accusation. Story 7. Today I messed up by making my bully co-worker cry. My co-worker Z is disabled from the waist down. We've worked in the same office for 3 years. She's very loud and obnoxious with 2 friends who often make fun of people. I gained weight during COVID due to stress eating. Some co-workers told me Z was calling me Snorlax behind my back. During a team building exercise, she called me Snorlax to my face, making everyone laugh. I complained to Human Resources who said they'd talk to her. The next day, Z shared a video in our work chat of a shirtless fat man dancing, calling him a happy Pokemon. When I confronted her, she said it was just a joke. As I walked away, I heard people laughing. Z was imitating the man from the video. I got angry and yelled at her, saying it would be funnier if she could stand up and dance herself. I repeated that she should get up from her chair to make everyone laugh. Z started crying uncontrollably. They had to take her to see a doctor because she wouldn't stop. Now I'm suspended for 2 weeks. I'm worried about how this will affect my upcoming performance review. I was working hard for a promotion. I think Z has some serious issues and I upset her badly. Story 8. Today I messed up by accidentally grabbing my co-worker's chest twice. I was trying to hand something to my co-worker while doing another task. When she didn't take it, I extended my arm without looking. I realized she was facing me and I accidentally pushed her chest with the back of my hand. I froze, apologized, and quickly left, feeling very awkward. Later, I was saying goodbye to my boss while walking backwards. As I waved with my left hand and reached for the door handle with my right, I didn't notice my co-worker standing behind me. I accidentally touched her chest again. At this point, I felt mortified. She just stared at me and I had no idea what to say or do. I'm worried she thinks I'm inappropriate or worse. I'm extremely embarrassed about the whole situation. Story 9. Today I effed up by accidentally showing my co-worker 2 different nudes of myself. I'm a 24-year-old female, my boyfriend is a 36-year-old male, and my co-worker is a 48-year-old female. I work in a deli, but our hot case shorted out, so we are not cooking any food, just slicing meat. So it has been boring, and we spend most of the day just chatting or deep cleaning. My co-worker is a dog mama, and I am a cat mama, so we often show each other pictures and videos of our pets. I do not usually take nudes. Actually, my boyfriend has never received a nude from me other than a picture of something else where maybe my naked body is visible in a reflection or something. I always get shy and delete attempted nudes. The other night I was a little buzzed from wine and he asked for a picture before my bath, so I tried to pose and take a mirror picture but could not work myself up to send it. Apparently I forgot to delete the photo. So I am at work today and wanted to show my co-worker a funny picture of my cat and was scrolling through my photos while she watched, which is normally safe. I scrolled right past a photo of my cat I sent my boyfriend where my whole nipple is visible in the corner of the screen. It is blurry, but very obviously a nipple on a boob. My face is so red and I just keep scrolling for the cat photo until I pass the nude I forgot to delete. My naked body, center screen, breasts out, pubic hair visible. My coworker did not say anything, but she stopped moving or breathing completely, and I just said, I don't know, I can't find the picture. Crazy how you can never find the one picture you're looking for, right? Oh my God, I am mortified. I do not even want to show up to work tomorrow. Story 10. Today I effed up by pretending to shoot myself to a coworker whose son committed suicide by shooting himself. I messed up so badly, guys. I work at a factory that bottles sunscreen. A month or so ago, one of my co-workers took time off work because her 17-year-old son tragically shot himself in the head. She was the one who found him in his room. I cannot even begin to imagine her pain and trauma. Today was her second day back at work. This morning, I gave her my condolences. If you have ever worked in a factory, you know how exhausted you get near the end of the day. Well, 7 hours into my shift, I was tired and taking a rest on a pallet. My coworker and I made eye contact. Not thinking, I put my fingers to my head and shot myself as the universal sign of this sucks. She immediately got a horrified look on her face and I turned away as soon as I realized my mistake. I wanted to apologize profusely and just let her know I am the biggest idiot on the planet and meant no disrespect. But I did not. I left. I want to quit now. I do not think I can face her again. Story 11. Today I effed up by telling my coworker the toilet was in extra stinky mode. I work at a school as a teaching assistant. Everyone has a little bit of a silly voice when talking to little kids, right? Or is that just me? Anyway, our toilets have an automatic flush feature that's motion activated. Most people still flush it manually, and sometimes while getting up they trigger the motion sensor, causing the toilet to flush twice. The kids and I call this extra stinky mode. It came about when somehow one of them learned about courtesy flushes, which, for those of you who don't know, is the extra flush you do mid-poop so you don't smell up the bathroom when you're taking a long time. Well, yesterday, after an extra long brain-frying day, I had to stay late to help grade some papers. I went to the bathroom. My coworker in the other stall finished up and accidentally triggered the second flush. I don't know why, but I just blurted out, uh-oh, extra stinky mode. Immediate regret. I could see her feet stop in their tracks while she tried to figure out what was wrong with me. She washed her hands and left, not saying a word. I stayed there for about 10 minutes hoping she'd gone and wasn't waiting for me outside the bathroom, and then went straight home. The worst part is, I don't know who it was. I didn't pay attention to the shoes everyone was wearing, so I could have said that to any of my female co-workers. I have no idea who I called extra stinky. I'm so embarrassed. Story 12. Today I effed up by realizing the older woman I've been sleeping with for months is my co-worker's mom. This literally happened like an hour ago. So I, 25-year-old male, have been involved with an older woman, 44-year-old female, lately. It started a few months ago with the onset of coronavirus. I was on Tinder trying to find someone to hook up with during quarantine so as to stay safe and also kill some time. I saw this very attractive older woman and decided to swipe right because, you know, it's every 20-something-year-old's dream to hook up with a MILF. A few days go by and I get a notification that I have a new match. Wahoo! I open up the app and lo and behold, it's the fine cougar I was hoping for. We start chatting and flirting. It's going really well. Out of nowhere, she messages me and says, I'm not sure how this app works. Do we just meet to have sex or do we go on a date first? I was drinking coffee at the time and promptly shot it out both nostrils. My chance had come. I replied back that people generally just meet up to go to the bone zone together, but I'm easy either way. She replies, well, good, because I hate formalities. I nearly shit my pants in excitement. She sends me her address and tells me she's free on Friday and to bring wine. The rest of that whole week was a complete blur of anxiety. I could not mess this up. So Friday comes, I show up with wine. She looks smoking hot. Better in person. We talk about music and traveling and all that. Not many personal details, which would come back to haunt me. Just sort of arts and culture talk. A few glasses of wine later and we're full blown going at it like rabbits in the middle of her living room floor. I left a little while later feeling like I'm the king of the entire universe and go to sleep. The next day she texts me saying how she had a great time and it made her feel young again and blah, blah, blah. She says she's off every Friday and Saturday and that next week we should do the same. This has been going on for roughly 3 months. We meet up once or twice a week, have sex like animals, and then go on our merry way until one of us gets horny again. Sweet deal, right? Wrong. I messaged her yesterday saying that I had today off work and asked if she wanted to meet up. She said her son was taking her out to lunch and that I could come over at 3 p.m. She had mentioned she had a son before but didn't go any further, and I didn't really care to ask. So 3 p.m. comes and I'm almost at her house when she messages me that she's running late. No problem. I park on the road and sort of just wait in my car because her car wasn't in the driveway yet. I'm sitting there listening to the radio when an oddly familiar SUV pulls into the drive. I sort of looked at it funny and then I immediately realised where I knew it from. My coworker, 23-year-old male, jumps out of the front seat, goes around to her side of the vehicle, gives her a kiss on the cheek and a hug, and then jumps back in the car. My jaw was on the ground. He reversed out of the driveway and stupid me is sitting like a deer in the headlights in plain sight. He turns around and is literally 10 feet in front of my car and staring directly at me. My face goes bright red and I feel like I'm going to vomit. Me and this guy work together every single day and I consider him a friend of mine. I even trained him when he started at my company. And the kicker is I've been telling him in detail about this older lady and he's been giving me immense kudos about it, saying that it's his dream. He pulls up beside me and looks very confused, asks me what I'm doing and how funny it was we ran into each other. I panic completely and stumble over my words and pretend like I'm on the wrong street and trying to find my cousin's house. He looked skeptical but sort of shrugged it off. The whole time his mother is standing there watching us through the curtains. He directs me where to go and I pull off and then circle back once he's gone. Needless to say, I went inside and told her what was up and we both sort of sat there in silence before I left. No boom boom today. I am now panicking. There's no way he's not going to know, right? And he's going to realise all these wild escapades with this she-devil night mistress I've been telling him about is actually his mum. I already called in sick for work tomorrow because I cannot look him in the eye. We'll update if anything happens. Pray for my soul. Story 13. Today I effed up by unhinging my jaw while eating in front of a coworker. So my body is kind of weird. I'm double jointed in many areas of my body. I'm double jointed in my fingers, toes, wrists, and you guessed it, jaw. This lets me unhinge my jaw with a slightly audible popping sound when I do. I also don't have much of a gag reflex and grew up in a household where whoever finished last has to do the dishes. So I'm also a fast eater, using my strange body to more or less just swallow food so I wouldn't have to do the dishes. This was normal for me until I started dating and learned that to some people it's actually quite unsettling to see. However, even though I try not to eat like this in public, I will still eat like this when I'm at home, with people I know or if I think I'm alone. So at my work, I usually take lunches later than everyone else, and thus I'm usually by myself when I eat. Until one of my co-workers had taken a later lunch than even me. She's a gal I had gotten along with for a while. However, she had come in while I was in the process of starting to shove my 8-inch fully packed extra meatball sub sandwich into my gaping maw. With an audible pop, my jaw unhinged and she just stood there, not making a noise, watching as I just packed this sandwich into my mouth like some sort of demented serpent in human skin. I didn't notice her until I had already gotten the sub more than halfway in my mouth. We made eye contact and just stared at each other. I felt like a little kid caught with his hand stuck in the cookie jar until she just walked out of the break room. It's been over a week and she still won't look me in the eyes and barely speaks to me. In summary, I unknowingly unhinged my jaw in front of a coworker while eating food. Now she barely talks or even looks at me after seeing it. Story 14. Today I effed up by congratulating a coworker. This morning at work, I saw a coworker of mine who just came back from a 2-week vacation. He left for his vacation a day early because his girlfriend went into labour. All of us were really happy for him because he's a great guy and was excited to be a father. I see him this morning and immediately went up to him and said, "Congratulations, new daddy." He immediately paled and said, "What do you mean?" I smiled, confused, and said, "You just had a kid, right? Congratulations, man. How's he doing?" No. He just stared at me for a moment, looked down and said, "He didn't make it, man. He was stillborn." I immediately felt like a complete idiot and began profusely apologizing and offered my condolences, but I could tell I hurt him. Unintentionally, of course, but the damage was done. He just kind of nodded and walked off. 3 hours later, and I feel like an absolute asshole. Story 15. Today I effed up by playing a game of gay chicken with my coworker. Obligatory "this didn't happen today" statement. It's actually been an ongoing situation for the past few months, and yesterday I lost. For context, I work as a server for a cafe, and many of my coworkers speak Spanish. I do not. They have this running joke that I'm a part of or the butt of. One of them will tell me, "Hey, go say some Spanish sentence to X." I go and say it. That coworker looks at me like I kicked a puppy, and the whole kitchen erupts in laughter. Rinse and repeat. Seemed like they got a kick out of it, so why ruin their fun? Well, a few months ago, this joke sparked a game of what I can only describe as gay chicken. I was told to say something to a coworker we'll call B. In the ensuing laughter, I was informed that I had said, "You are very handsome. I want to touch your butt." But, I'm comfortable with my sexuality. I went along with it. My thought process was, oh, you want to make this weird? I'll make this weird. So I looked B in the eyes, winked, and said, "Si mi amor," in a sultry voice. Since then, work has been filled with a series of increasingly romantic gestures. He started calling me baby, corazon, honey, etc. I did the same and began making a heart shape with my hands every time I passed him. He would pucker his lips and make kissing noises, and I responded by writing small notes in Spanish to him, saying things like, "Your eyes sparkle like the night sky." I should have known I was outmatched by his next escalation. As soon as I walked through the doors in the morning, B would hug me and start rubbing his face on my chest as he would softly meow. He was truly a master at this game. But I was in too deep. I played what would be my final move and asked B to slow dance with me next to the dishwasher at closing time. We did not leave room for Jesus. On my way to work yesterday, I expected our contest of homoerotic brinkmanship was nearing a finale. I was prepared for the nuclear option, a kiss or at most some heavy petting. But what B did was barbaric. While I was dropping off dirty dishes in the back, he snuck up behind me and just bit me. Not softly either. There were teeth marks. I yelled at him. "What in the goddamn hell are you doing?" Of course, the kitchen staff thought this was hilarious. However, as I made my way back towards the dining room, I saw the cafe's owner look at me with her own "what the fuck" expression. Apparently, the entire store had heard me. I don't think I'll ever forget the look in her eyes when I had to explain the reason for my outburst and the bite mark on my arm. It was full of equal parts confusion, disappointment, and exasperation. In summary, my co-worker and I have been acting increasingly gay towards each other for months, as a joke of course. In the pursuit of seeing who would back out first, we probably broke countless rules about workplace public displays of affection. It was all fun and games until yesterday when he bit me. I yelled loud enough for the whole store to hear, and the cafe's owner demanded an explanation. I don't know if they'll ever look at me the same again. Story 16. Today I effed up by letting a co-worker know that I saw her nude. I'm a happily married male security guard working third shift at a sleepy little hospital. Technically, it's just a standalone emergency room, and if anybody needs further treatment, they get sent to one of 2 or 3 real hospitals. She's a nurse that just started working here, and I've just started getting to know. She was telling me about her upcoming wedding today, and we chatted for a little bit about her selling her old house, my marriage jitters 5 years ago, and the like. It seemed very friendly, and I could tell how excited she was for this wedding. She had kind things to say about me and my story, but I took it as just friendly chatter instead of flirting. I was sitting at my desk, browsing Reddit on one screen while the cameras are on the other, and I saw movement in the triage room, which is odd because there aren't any patients in the building. Nobody in the lobby either. It's the nurse who's about to get married who slips off her shoes, and pants, and top. I could see she shaves her bikini area and the lacy bits on her bra, which is all she's wearing except socks. She steps onto the scale, fiddles with her bra a little bit, and then steps back off and gets dressed again. Now my heart is racing. I'm sick to my stomach. I can't believe what I just saw. It feels gross to have intruded on something like that. What am I supposed to do? I decide that what I'm not going to do is tell my supervisor. I don't think there's a way for me to delete the video footage, and I know that if my higher-ups know what to look for, they can find it. I don't think they just browse everything randomly though, so if I don't draw attention to it, chances are good no one else will see it, right? None of that was my fault. What was my fault is that I got her attention on her way out the door and said something really stupid. Hey, good luck showing the house. Thanks, she smiled. Hey, I hesitated. The anxiety started to choke me. I don't know how to tell you this, but there are cameras in the triage room. I watched confusion make way to realization, followed by disgust. Utter disgust. Anger, perhaps. I was still reeling and wondering how I expected this news to be taken. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I did not know that, she spat out, trying to look anywhere but at me. I won't tell anyone. Good luck fitting in your wedding dress. See you later. I still don't know where in the everlasting hell that came from. She left without saying anything more. Story 17. Today I effed up by telling my minor coworker to nail me. This actually happened today, and I'm still embarrassed 5 hours later. For a little context, I'm 22, female, and work in a garden centre in a management position. Occasionally, we have to build certain structures like A-frames and tiered displays, etc. So today I enlisted the help of my 16-year-old male coworker for help with a project. He was holding the flashlight, so to say, handing over tools and whatnot. Well, I needed a nail, so instead of just saying so like a normal person, I blurted, "Hey, nail me," and instantly realized how wrong it sounded. He let out a giggle and said something like, I don't think that's not. And I replied, oh, you know what I meant. But it doesn't end there. I then escaped to the back room to die and also tell my other adult coworker what I accidentally said. So I proceeded to explain to my coworker who's holding scissors. You know, like if you're helping me and I need those, I hold out my hand and I say, scissor me. No, that's not what I say ever again, unless it's a beer, because that's the only item that sounds appropriate to use the phrase with, and I will never live this down. In summary, today I, the manager, innocently but embarrassingly, told one coworker to nail me and another to scissor me all within 5 minutes. Great. Story 18. Today I effed up twice by grabbing a new coworker's boob and then forgetting her husband died. This happened an hour ago on lunch, so a real today I fucked up for you guys. On Wednesdays, our department head takes everyone out for a long lunch. It's a special time we all look forward to in our boring 45-hour work week. It is normal to carpool all together, and naturally, I drive my 2 friend co-workers each time. However, this week we have a new hire just out of grad school. We'll call her Sarah, name changed. She's quickly picking up pace with the rest of the office and settling in nicely. While everyone is leaving the office for lunch, I offer her a ride in my car with the other 2, and she agrees and hops in the passenger seat. Now here's where the first fuck up happens. While on the way to the restaurant, Sarah is picking up on the group dynamic and tagging in on some good banter. Everything is going smoothly, and then while crossing into an intersection, the car in front of us gets swiped by someone who thought they could make the right turn in time. Traffic comes to a halt and I slam on the brakes. In doing so, I reach out to my right to stop her from flying forward. I check to see if we are all good and everyone is okay, while realizing I am currently full on honking Sarah's right knocker. My words start to trail off. Damn, I hope everyone is okay. That kind of sentence that time slows down in, yeah. Amazingly, she laughs it off and says not to worry about it, that I was just reacting to the situation. For the next few minutes, the car was silent until Sarah said, "That's funny, I haven't had that much action in a while," which eased the mood and the car all laughed. And fuck up number 2 comes from my dumbass saying, "Ah well, we all have our dry spells." Something I thought was innocent enough, but still playing along with the banter we had going earlier. She goes quiet and the rest of the car starts chatting again. We get to lunch and everything seems okay, but Sarah is a little off and not as bright or talkative as she was in the morning. So I asked what's up. She told me she was a little uneasy at my comment in the car. I instantly apologized, saying I had no reason to talk about her sexuality and her private life and that I was sorry. She said she didn't care about that and that it was fine. It's just that it reminded her of the anniversary of her husband's death coming up next month. My heart sunk. I had completely forgotten about her husband. I felt so bad, I instantly started apologizing for everything in the world. I felt horrible. My friend overheard this and just was white in the face. He seemed mortified to even spectate this conversation. Sarah ended up going home early about 15 minutes ago, but stopped by my desk to tell me not to worry about anything from lunch. I feel so horrible that I have been sitting here unproductive, writing a Reddit post to cope with it. Please Reddit, help me feel a little better. Story 19. Today I fucked up by making one of my coworkers realize his father died by hanging himself. Obligatory, this happened a few weeks ago. So I gave one of my coworkers a ride home a few Fridays ago. He and I started chatting about people who work at Town Hall in the next town over. I had mentioned that my grandmother had worked there for 40 years, and I mentioned the last name of my grandmother. For the sake of this post, I'm just going to say the last name is Smith. He told me that he has relation to the Smiths also, so he and I started digging into how we are related. I asked him if we could call his father or mother, and he told me his father had passed away when he was young. I asked him what happened if he didn't mind sharing, and he said he really doesn't know. No one will tell him, which is okay, because he doesn't really want to know anyway. So we keep digging. We tried calling a bunch of our family members, but they didn't answer the phones, except for my aunt. Mind you, we are in the car at the moment, and my phone is hooked up to the speakers, so anything anyone says on the phone can be heard by everyone in the car. I get in touch with my aunt, and I ask her how we are related to his side of the family. She basically told me that my great-grandmother's sister is his great-grandmother. So all in all, a pretty far line down to be considered close cousins. My aunt keeps talking, and she asked me why I asked. I told her that my co-worker and I found out that he's somehow related to the Smiths, and we were trying to see a connection. She asked me what his name was, and I said Bob. I completely failed to mention to her that he was in the car with me at the moment. She says, oh, his father unfortunately hanged himself a few years ago. I tried to mutter her out of what she was saying, but failed to do so, and Bob heard everything. I saw his eyes widen and what seemed to me pale. I just told my aunt thank you and hung up the phone, completely embarrassed that he found this out in not the most ideal way. Bob said to me, well, that explains a lot. I didn't want to pry, so I just said, yeah, and I'm sorry. He didn't really say much after that, and he left. Whenever I see him at work now, it's really awkward for us, and I think it really messed him up. I feel so bad but not sure what to do, as I don't want to bring up his father's death at all.